Hello, and welcome to your NBA Stock Report for the week of March 14th. I'm Tim Bontemps, ESPN NBA reporter. News is trending up and down around the association, beginning with the Brooklyn Nets re-emerging as a potential threat in the East. Now look, it's obviously been an insane season in Brooklyn on 1,000 levels, beginning with, and frankly ending with, Kyrie Irving's decision to not get the vaccine in the fall. As a result of that, James Harden decides he wants to be traded. He gets swapped for Ben Simmons, who still has not played. And Kevin Durant also missed a bunch of time with an MCL sprain. But Durant is back, and as a result, so are the Nets. We saw that this week with Kyrie Irving back on the court now, going for 50 in Charlotte, followed by he and Kevin Durant completely demolishing Harden and the Philadelphia 76ers on Thursday. And then with Irving watching from the stands, Durant going for 50 points against the crosstown rival Knicks on Sunday at Barclays Center. Now look, the Nets still have a lot of flaws. They have a lot of injury concerns. They frankly just have a lot of availability concerns. Who knows if Kyrie's going to play? Who knows what Ben Simmons is going to look like? Can Kevin Durant, who's missed a bunch of time the last couple of years, stay healthy over the next couple months? But if you're the teams at the top of the East, Philly, Milwaukee, Boston, Miami, Chicago, you're looking at that bottom half of the bracket, and you do not want to see Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets in the first round of the playoffs. So that is going to be a real storyline to watch over these next several weeks, is how those top teams are sort of trying to position themselves to maybe avoid the Nets, and whether Brooklyn, now 3.5 games, by the way, behind Cleveland for that 6th spot in the East, can the Nets get out of the play-in tournament and ensure themselves a spot in the postseason without having to go into a potential one and done scenario in that play-in tournament. Now let's shift to the other end of the standings and look at Cade Cunningham, the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and the Detroit Pistons. Detroit's been playing a lot better lately, and it's no coincidence that the big driving force behind that is Cade Cunningham looking like the number 1 overall pick in the draft over the last couple months. Cade obviously got off to a slow start after he hurt his ankle during training camp, had to get ramped up early in the season, knocked some rust off as things went. But since the All-Star break, over the past 10 games, he's averaging 22 points a game, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. And he really is starting to come into his own in the second half of the season. His shot is still inconsistent. Even lately, he's only shooting 28% from 3. I think he's around 30% for the season. But I just love the poise and the pace at which Cade plays. He never looks rushed. He's always in control of the game. He does a great job using his size to control the pace and control play. And I think that when I look at him, it's a little bit of an odd comparison given how much different their games are. But he really reminds me a lot of Jason Tatum. They have, Tatum's obviously more of a scorer, Cade more of a distributor, but they both are big for their positions. They can play at both ends, and they just have a similar sort of poise and calmness about them that I think is really going to serve Cade well. So, we talked about in the Hoop Collective last week. I think Evan Mobley and Scotty Barnes are ahead of Cade in the Rookie of the Year race. I think Cade's pretty much locked into 3rd on my ballot. But I think going forward, I'm a very big Cade Cunningham fan. And if you're a Detroit Pistons fan, you have a lot to be excited about with him going forward with this young group. Add another top 5 pick to this group in this year's draft, and all of a sudden, the Detroit Pistons are going to be cooking with gas again. And finally, let's talk about some guys who have finally got back on the court after missing a bunch of time with injuries. Alex Caruso was the first of them. Came back to play against Cleveland on Saturday night. Great to see him back on the court after missing a couple of months after falling on his wrist after Grayson Allen's foul in a game against the Bucks earlier this year. The Bulls have really missed Caruso defensively. I think he had a shot for me to be at minimum on my ballot for Defensive Player of the Year if he hadn't gotten hurt. He was having just an unbelievable impact on Chicago's defense. And now they get him back for the stretch run as the Bulls try to get ramped back up to where they were at the start of the season and avoid falling out of that top 4 spots in the East and losing home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. And then Monday night, we have 2 very key injury returns. We have Brook Lopez coming back for the Milwaukee Bucks in Utah. We have Draymond Green coming back for the Golden State Warriors against the Orlando Magic. And these 2 teams could have their championship hopes hinge on what Brook Lopez and Draymond Green look like coming back from these back injuries. I think it's safe to say Draymond Green's back injury a little more critical to Golden State's chances than Brook Lopez's is to Milwaukee, but don't sleep on the impact that Brook Lopez being out has had on this Bucks team. Milwaukee has really missed him at both ends of the court. He's a very good defensive player. He stretches the floor as a solid shooter. He allows Giannis Antetokounmpo to play at power forward where he's a little more comfortable, gives them some more depth at center. They don't have to play Bobby Portis there. He shifts to coming off the bench. They don't need to rely on Serge Ibaka. A lot of things fall back into place when Brook Lopez is on the court. And I don't think we need to go into Draymond Green's impact. That is obvious on the Warriors. So hopefully those guys can stay healthy over the next couple of months, stay on the court, and keep playing. But it's great to see all three of those guys back on the court for their respective teams as they get ready for the stretch run. Now let's shift to the stock down portion, and unfortunately I need to start with the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that has been one of the feel-good stories in the NBA this season. It wasn't long ago, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, that the Cavs had the best chance by ESPN's analytics modeling of being the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Now they have about a 1 in 3 chance of being in the play-in, and I frankly think it's much higher than that. When you look at the way the Brooklyn Nets are playing now, as we talked about earlier, they're just 3.5 games back. The Raptors have had Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby out. I thought they were a bit dead in the water after Cleveland beat them last week. They're now back within a game. It's just hard to look at this Cavs team with Darius Garland having back issues, Caris LeVert being in and out of the lineup, and now Jared Allen, most importantly, being out with his finger injury. It's just hard to look at this Cavs team and think they're going to be able to hold off Toronto and Brooklyn and stay in that 6th spot. And if they fall into the play-in tournament, there's a chance Cleveland could miss the playoffs, which would be a shame given how their season's gone. Now, you could look at it as a bit of a blessing in disguise because the Cavs gave up a lottery-protected first to get Caris LeVert. If they are in the lottery this year, they'll keep that pick. That certainly wouldn't be a bad outcome for them to add another young piece to this team. And either way, regardless of how this goes, it's been a successful season on many levels for the Cavs. But certainly, this is not where the Cavs anticipated they'd be a month ago. And if things don't turn around quick, they could be looking square in the face at the play-in tournament here in a few weeks. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about pick protection. Now, why are we going to talk about that? Well, the Memphis Grizzlies, one of the best teams in the league this year, was looking like they were going to get, at minimum, a mid-first round pick, and potentially a lottery pick with the Los Angeles Lakers floundering the way they are. But because in the trade that they made with the New Orleans Pelicans that got them part of that pick last year, when the two teams swapped Steven Adams, Jonas Valanciunas, and swapped spots in the draft, the Grizzlies moving up to 10, the Pelicans back to 17. In that trade, the New Orleans Pelicans protected the Lakers pick this year in the top 10 spots, meaning that if that pick finishes in the top 10, something no one would have imagined could happen at the time, the Pelicans will keep the pick. And if it's from 11 to 30, the Grizzlies will keep the pick. Well, right now, the Lakers, who are lifeless and look like they're playing out the string, sit in the 11th spot. Who's right behind them? The New Orleans Pelicans, who play the Lakers twice more down the stretch and are going to be incredibly motivated to get ahead of this Lakers team, not just to try to make it into the playoffs, but also to try to make sure that that pick, at least going into the lottery, sits in the top 10, and then would therefore, assuming it doesn't fall out of the top 10 if the lottery goes a certain way, would then go to the Pelicans, giving them another young asset to add to this core they've got with C.J. McCollum and Brandon Ingram, and if they could get Zion Williamson back on the court, him as well. So that's going to be a race to watch here down the stretch is where do the Lakers finish in the standings, and does that pick, which seemed like it was going to Memphis, and they were going to have 3 first-round picks all year, Memphis might all of a sudden be looking at 2 first-round picks and having the best one of them winding up going to the New Orleans Pelicans instead. Finally, let's talk about the Sacramento Kings. I really feel for Kings fans. The Kings trade for Domantas Sabonis because they're trying to, improve the team now, make the play-in tournament. The Kings are the only team among these teams trying to make the play-in tournament that seems to be trying to make the play-in tournament. The Portland Trailblazers, clearly not trying to win. The San Antonio Spurs have gotten Greg Popovich the all-time wins record. Congrats to Pop, by the way. Now they seem like they're going to be trying to position themselves in the lottery. And the Kings, despite the fact that they are trying to make the play-in tournament, have lost 8 of 10, have lost 4 in a row. Domantas Sabonis got suspended for getting into it with the refs last week. And now they sit several games out of that final play-in tournament spot, and they're 21 games under 500. It's been a really rough go for a long time for Kings fans, and I just hope at some point in the future, what is a great fan base, I grew up watching the Chris Webber, Mike Bibby, Vlade Divac teams are some of my favorite teams of all time with Rick Adelman coaching them. I hope at some point that fan base could have another sustained run of success because they deserve it. But one of the truly incredible stats is in all the time the Kings have been in Sacramento, the 7 years Rick Adelman was with the team, they had a winning record every season. They have not had a single other winning season in their entire history, this year now included. And that just sort of sums up the state of the Kings and what has been one of the most depressing franchises in the NBA over the past 10 or so years. Hopefully at some point that changes for Kings fans. It's not, however, going to seemingly over the next month. But that'll do it for this week's edition of the NBA Stock Report. Hope you enjoy what should be an exciting week of games, including the one I'm going to be at tonight. Denver Nuggets, Philadelphia 76ers here in Philadelphia. Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, the number 1, number 2 showdown in the MVP race. First time they played against each other in a couple of years. Really excited for that game. But hope you all enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll get back to you with the new edition of the Stock Report next Monday.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.